Fala pessoal do TecMundo, estamos aqui em São Francisco no Square Enix Showcase, o evento que a Square trouxe aí alguns jornalistas para mostrarem alguns dos jogos que estão sendo lançados. E o destaque é o quê? É o Agente 47, cara. É o Hitman, que a galera quer realmente matar. Então eu vou trocar uma ideia aqui com o Seifert, ele é diretor do estúdio da Interactive, são os caras responsáveis pelo jogo. A gente já jogou um bom tempo do jogo aqui e agora a gente pode conversar exatamente com a galera que está por trás do game, né? So first, Hans, thanks a lot for this interview. In our time with the game, we saw that people were gonna play like the escalation contracts and there's the online component. So the first thing for the Hitman fan, how is he going to play this game? Like, what can he do?
Well, as a matter of fact, we always say when you try to do something in a Hitman game and you think you can do it, you most likely can. Because one of the strengths of also where we take pride in is that the worlds we create, they are very dense and very big, and we try to make everything in the game that makes sense interactive. So you can actually combine it and can use it to your advantage. So the ultimate goal is always taking out your targets, but how you do that is completely up to you. And all of these different game modes also help you to learn what is in the game, what is this role of assassination, and also to learn about the environment and then use it for the different modes you play.
Can you talk a little bit about each of the modes?
So first of all, obviously the game has the classic story and the classic hits that we always had in the series. That is also what you can play alone, right? You can go from location to location, you travel the world. You have a story that's unfolding episodically over the course of 2016 and also concluding this year. And we start March 11th with the prologue that takes you back 20 years into Hitman's past when he actually joins the ICA and gets his graduation. And then after that to the present day in modern day Paris, and that's your first big hit. And from there, the story evolves each month. And I think a good image to have is when you play Paris for the first time, and your main targets there are Viktor Novikov and Dalia Margolis. When you take them out the first time, they are just an assignment, just a hit. You will see the cutscene at the end, you get the thriller vibe of the story, and you might overhear conversations. But once the story has concluded or developed over the course of 2016, you will get a different perspective of that. And perhaps you also come back and play the level again and listen to the people you met, the KGB officer, or see what's happening there, and see it in a completely different context, like you do with a favorite TV show, where when you've seen the season finale, you might watch one episode again under different context to get it all.
I read a lot of YouTube comments and forum comments about the fans, and I saw that they weren't agreeing themselves. Is this a reboot? Is this a prequel? Yeah. Is this a continuation? Where exactly does the new Hitman stays in terms of the story throughout all the previous games?
So the new one is the continuation. The majority takes place after Absolution, so except for the beginning that takes you into the past. But the game itself is a continuation. 47 is back with his long-term handler Diana Burnwood. It's the same universe, but the story is not really based on Hitman Absolution. It's not a continuation, but it takes place in the same world, and it's not a reboot. What it is, though, is like we tried to distill the best of the 15 years of Hitman we had. We also listened to what players liked and disliked, and we took the open world approach from Blood Money and the world traveling from like Silent Assassin and Contracts, but we also took the technology that we developed for Hitman Absolution, the new Glacier engine and the AI that we can simulate differently now, the controls that feel way more modern than the ones we had in the past, and we brought that to the current generation of consoles. And because of that, and because this is the start for the first time of a story arc, a storyline that will go over multiple games, and it's the first step into this world of assassination that grows and expands while it's running. That's why we just called it Hitman, the first one without any subtitle.
So before we were talking about the episodic mode, I was also reading a lot of comments about fans, and I noticed that the fan base is kind of split between the guys who really love the story and the guys who don't care about the story. They are really focused about the gameplay, about exploring stuff. How would you say is this balance? Like, if I'm a story fan, what would I feel about the new Hitman? And if I'm just focused about having a killing playground, yeah. What will I feel as well?
Well, you're touching on something that's extremely typical for Hitman, because we have these different playstyles and these different demographics, if you want. So Hitman is, as a game, it's a toy, right? It's a place you come back over and over again. And we see that in Absolution, when we introduced the first multiplayer mode with contracts, that was overwhelmingly successful. Never expected that much of an uptake, right? Almost half, so 40% of the players actually played also online, which was marvelous given how much people said, hey, online doesn't really fit. So from that perspective, I think the playground aspect is very important. So you can ignore the story if you're not interested, and go from location to location and do your hits and play around with them. And then there are also modes that actually take you further, like of course contracts is back, and we have escalation contracts, which we will add every week. We'll add stuff like that: escalation contracts, elusive targets. These are all modes that actually give you things to do in the game world that evolve around being creative, playing with the toys and taking out your targets. And that's the sandbox element of it. The people that like the story in the Hitman game, they will have an overarching frame story that concludes over the course of the season. So it is, in that perspective, I would say, told like a TV show. The vibe is more like a thriller, so more comparable with, I would say, Silent Assassin. Not so much with Absolution, which was more like a road movie kind of style. Very, very story-driven. So it will not be that story-driven anymore. So for instance, there will be no targets that's taken out in the cutscene. That is the opposite of what we are doing right now. But of course, we are also very diligent that this is a story that makes sense, that can carry multiple games, that also tells a certain story inside each of the hits. And the majority of the actual narrative happens in the game, by listening to conversations, by exploring the things that happen in the level. And then the cutscenes in between, when you travel from location to location, these are actually connecting these plots. And in combination, that gives a sense of the story. So I would say that's classic Hitman, right? Some people play it like an action game or like a toy, and the guns blazing, and others play it like a stealth game, and with disguising and voyeurism and sneaking, and others play it like an adventure game, following the story, observing the characters, listening to what's happening, solving the puzzles that are in the levels. And each of this is legit. And as developer, we want to make sure that enough of all of that is in the game to satisfy them.
Nice. And Hitman is like a hard game. Like you have to really focus on what you're doing. And in Absolution, you guys mentioned several times that you were approaching a way to make the game more accessible. And some people liked it, some people loved it, some people disliked it a little. How are you guys approaching the difficulty spikes, or something that for the new player that has never played the franchise before?
Yeah, so one thing is correct. Hitman is a game for connoisseurs. It's not a niche game, it's still many million people play it, but it's not as accessible like a sports game or something like that. And I would say it's a game for gamers. If it's your first Hitman game, if it's the very first game you ever play, it might be very overwhelming what you can do in it. But we also try to help people if they choose that as a first game, which is obviously an honor. But if it's the first Hitman game you play and you played other games, we have especially a feature that we call Opportunities now introduced, which is practically a guidance to the buffet you have in the Hitman level. Your time to play it, I hope, right? So you might have seen some opportunities, and I hope they also saw they guide you pretty well to some spectacular things we did. Obviously, there are thousands of ways to take out your target, and the players come up with these, but we make sure that there are at least like a dozen or something like that are really spectacular or memorable or funny, and the opportunities guide you to that. I know that like a 15-year hardcore Hitman fan, in the tutorial will say, no, thank you, I don't need that. And that's completely okay. But if you're new to the franchise, then try it out, be guided. It doesn't tell you, press this button to kill this person. It will never do that. But as it's called the feature, Opportunities, it will show you opportunities. And then with a little bit of thinking, you will figure out more easily what are all the possible ways to play the game. Some people will play it more stealth, more action, more puzzle. And that's what Opportunity also guides you to.
Okay, and Hans, for all these years now, Agent 47 is a close friend of yours. Like, it's been a part of your life. So when you're thinking about the new game, you're working several games in the franchise. When you go to sleep, if you think like, what is the most exciting thing that you're doing for the new game, for new players and old players alike? What do you think that you're really proud about this project?
I'm really proud about taking the step to making the first truly episodic live AAA game. I know it's controversial, but everything new, everything groundbreaking you do will always be challenging questions, and I think that's completely okay. I'm convinced this is gonna deliver the best possible game that we've ever done, and it's been years in our vision. It's been way more than that also in my vision. Making the game accessible for people that cannot spend $60, I think, is important, and keeping the promise that if you spend $60, there are absolutely no extra costs to that, but we will make the game better, we will expand the world of Assassination, we promise a minimum, but you're really determined to do more. That is what excites me most about it, to be honest.
Thanks a lot, Hans. É isso aí, é o TecMundo aqui no Square Enix Showcase 2016, falando sobre Hitman.